Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of the Resilience Rundown. I'm your host, Thomas Bryant, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Gareth and Paul, both from Commvault. Gareth, it's great to meet you. Could you maybe share a little bit about your role here at Commvault?
Hey, Thomas, fantastic. Thank you for having me on the show today. So I've joined Commvault as the field CTO for security for Asia Pacific, which essentially means helping our customers kind of understand what's happening in the cybersecurity space, all the trends and emerging threats that's going through that side of things, and also working with our internal development teams to keep across some of those trends, increasing our product and really understanding the kind of future direction of how we tackle cybersecurity at Commvault. Great to be here today.
Great. Thanks for being here. Paul, how about yourself? Could you share a little bit about your background and your
Yeah,
time
thanks.
here?
Great to be here. I look after all the pre-sales engineering for Commvault across Australia and New Zealand. Been with the business for quite a few years, so understand the changes we're making and the shift we're making in our technology. It's great to have Gareth as part of the business now to really bring the story home as to what we're trying to achieve through helping our customers. Look at the bigger picture around cyber resiliency. So, thanks very
Great.
much.
It's really great to have you both. One of the things I wanted to kind of talk to you about today is we keep hearing all the time in the news about ransomware hitting this company or that company, but disasters kind of seem to have gone quiet, but they still happen. And in a lot of cases, when disaster strikes, everything's gone. And I think folks have kind of forgotten how do you get back online? So, Paul, I was wondering maybe if you could share, what are some of the best practices around disasters when it comes to like that smoldering crater or your data is just gone?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point that you raised because when it happens, and you don't want to make the front page of a newspaper for the wrong reasons, obviously. But what we're seeing a lot now is, and where we're helping our customers around the remediation side, and the conversations we're having is more around the difference between disaster recovery and cyber recovery. They're two different aspects, and a lot of customers are slowly getting that feel. I think what we look at also is the scope. So what I mean around the scope is the scope and what it encompasses from a recovery perspective. It may only be a small segment of your business. It may be your whole hybrid environment. It may be a lights out effect. We also look at, from particularly through when we're doing a recovery process, and this is mainly through our professional services and our support organisation, is around the nature of the threats. We can, physical damage to disruptions is quite simple, but when it comes to restoring from a catastrophic event like an anomaly or ransomware or something else, it takes on a whole new picture. The response approach, obviously, disaster recovery is fairly simple, where you've got replicated active, bring one side back up, and hey, hopefully everything's back up and running. Whereas, a cyber recovery, on the other hand, requires a lot more dynamic, a lot more adaptive process as to what you need to do. It involves a lot more teams from response activities, and then also there's the other side, which a lot of people don't look at, is the remediation process, including the forensics, and seeing the forensics that you make sure that, hey, you're not reinfecting what you just have been trying to recover. And this is where Commvault have changed, I suppose, the playing level of how organisations now can look at a recovery process, from making sure that everything that is being recovered is clean. And obviously, I think probably the fourth piece to it is around timing, and timing is everything. I mean, we're seeing organisations that are putting SLAs of an hour on a tier one application. Now, is that possible coming from zero and having to rebuild from a physical or virtual server, all the way through to getting back online. So the system disruption from that perspective is key.
You can't break the laws of physics when it comes to recovering data.
No, that's true. You can only write so much to a disk, so at the speed. Yeah.
Gareth, anything you'd like to add on that point?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points to add on to that, Paul. But in the same way that you deploy a defense in depth strategy for your cybersecurity controls, it's really also about making sure that you've got those basic fundamentals for your backup strategy as well, right? So we talk about the kind of 3-2-1 backup strategy, having 3 copies of your data, having it on 2 different media types, having it with 1 copy offsite, because these disasters still happen. Network cards still fail. Environmental issues still happen. Cables still get cut. So being able to really have the resiliency around that backup strategy and how you can recover that at pace within all of the, laws of engineering and physics and everything else. But that will allow you to have that faster recovery, and then also kind of leaning into your cloud first initiatives to make sure that your primary data location, you also have a secure backup location as well as part of that process. So yeah, it's still going back to the real fundamentals of those backup strategies.
So I want to touch a bit more on that point, Gareth, if you don't mind. So like in the case of like companies when they have a disaster, like let's just say that their entire site's gone. I mean, what should they be thinking about in this, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, whatever word you want to choose? You mentioned like secure backup locations. Like, is it critical to have the data offsite? Is it critical to have that like immutability that we could talk? Everybody seems to talk about. Like, what should they really have like table stakes, but also should they be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first thing to be thinking about, Thomas, before you even get to any of the technology and that sort of stuff, is really kind of understand, have I got a plan that's going to get me back online? And not only do I have a plan, whether that's a disaster recovery plan or a cyber recovery plan, but have I tested that plan? And do I have the muscle memory around being able to, kind of go through that plan when those table stakes are so high, right? You don't want to be making decisions in a stressful situation, and you don't want to be trying to kind of build the aeroplane while you're flying it at the same time. So, kind of understanding what that plan looks like, what decisions have you need to make ahead of time, and how are you going to make the right decision, or at least have all the information to make that decision and why you're doing it as you're kind of going through these things, right? Because they are stressful. They do happen at the most inconvenient time on the weekend. And you want to make sure that you've got all of those elements tested and, understood as part of the planning side of things. And then when you look at the kind of complementary things that go with that plan, how do you understand all the different technology components, and what does that really look like across all the different elements of those backups and those different recovery options, particularly when you look at the security, who has access to those backups, how those backups can be used, what are the kind of different recovery times that those backups have employed, and then the security of those backups as well. So understanding the immutability, have they been kind of configured to be, right once? And then, what's the ability to restore those over the kind of time period that you need to? And I guess part of that process where Paul mentioned earlier was, the integrity of those backups are important. When you're going through a disaster recovery, the integrity is just being able to say, hey, have I written back the data that I was expected to do as part of the backup? When you're going through cyber recovery, the integrity is not to say, have I written back the malware that's been on that backup for however long a time it's been dwelling in your organization, but can you go through that exercise of understanding, is it going to be a clean backup, and how do I kind of recover, from that side of things as well? So yeah, that's where we kind of are getting to that really critical intersection where cyber recovery is not the same as disaster recovery, and you need to make sure that your plans adjust for the different elements, especially around the integrity of kind of taking those things further.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it almost seems daunting. There's a lot more work to do there, and I think you made that point about like action and not the time to do it. we had a recent episode where we were talking about action bias, and that was the first thing that popped in my head is people just want to do things, and it's like doing things in the absence of a plan isn't always the best plan.
No.
And doing things without knowing why you're doing them is also not a great plan either.
Yeah. So I want to touch on something else. There's been a lot of news all over the world around different, customers getting hit by ransomware and disasters. But there's lots of new legislation coming out. Like if we look into the Europeans, they've got DORA, which is around resiliency for financial industries. I understand that down under in Asia Pacific, ANZ, Australia specifically, really, that there's some new regulatory changes that might be on the horizon. I was wondering if maybe you could share a little bit about kind of some of those regulations and kind of what they mean in the case of disaster and cyber recovery.
Yeah.
Paul, if you want to take that one, maybe.
Yeah, I'll kick it off, but I'm sure Gareth has some very good words of wisdom around this one. But I think the observations that have been seen from the APRA side from our perspective is a lot of control weaknesses that are occurring. I suppose it's really built into three different segments. One is around the insufficient segmentation of our production data versus the backup environments. And what we've seen is, obviously a production environment has been compromised, but we don't want to make sure that the backup environment has been compromised as well. So the segmentation of that is now key. It always has been key, but it's now getting rules and regulations put around whether it be a third-party copy in a different cloud, if you're running on a hybrid, whether it be a different DC with a copy of the data. I think there's also more area of focus now being put around the control of testing, and what I mean around that is the validation of the backups are good, they're effective, they're protected from unauthorized access. So, the people who own the data control the data. And there's the ability to, from a backup technology, to have notifications come back to when that data has been accessed by or tried to be accessed by the wrong people. And I think the other, probably the third one is the validation that you have the data there to recover, and the retention periods around that data to make a full recovery. And that basically comes back to how organizations are setting their risk management around, and to Gareth's point before, the plan. There's not much use having the plan in your production environment and no one has an offline copy, no one has a hard copy, because you don't know what the plan is.
So true. Gareth, would you like to maybe expand on that?
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. I mean, I think just to start with, it's incredibly clear that regulatory bodies globally, not just within ANZ and APAC, they continue to maintain a really laser focus on cyber resiliency. And it's a key priority across all of those regulatory bodies. And we've seen, just early in June this year, particularly for ANZ, some additional insights and guidance around what some of those common areas of weaknesses are, and across particularly really centered around how organizations from a system and a data restoration perspective will, what do they do in the event of a cyber incident? And I think Paul touched on three of those kind of observations and some of those common areas where we just need to make sure that those organizations continue to, review what those practices are, understand what their testing procedures kind of go with it, and, understand the robustness of those data backups and how they can protect, against any data loss as part of an incident, whether that's a disaster recovery incident or a cybersecurity incident as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's not a problem that's going away, and I think it's good that we're starting to focus on it. At least in my mind. I mean, like I remember doing DR a long time ago, and yeah, the muscle memory was the biggest part of it. And now with cyber recovery, there's just it's not the same. And I think that's the big difference is people really have to get it in their mind that these things, while similar, are very different because the premise that you can trust the data, it's gone. So it's very different in my mind as well. So there's lots to learn here. I want to thank you both for coming on the Resilience Rundown. If folks want to engage with you, where can they find you? Like, is LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever it's called these days? How can folks get a hold of you? Paul, maybe you first and then Gareth?
Oh, LinkedIn or
Okay.
Paul Lancaster, Commvault.com.
Okay.
They can get a hold of me by getting in hold of Paul first, but all of the social channels, LinkedIn and the rest of it. But I'm looking forward to continue this conversation as well.
Yeah, no,
Awesome.
definitely.
Well, thanks to everybody that's watching this. We'd love to invite you to make sure you subscribe to our Resilience Rundown. And stay tuned for other ideas. And please do engage us in the comments as well. We'd love to hear about what other topics you're interested in and try to get content and guests on the show to help answer questions or things that you'd like to see. So thank you again, both, for coming on the show, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks for having us.